regardless of who you are, unless you're a top 50 prospect in high school, it's really hard to come in and compete at these high level places. So being able to take a step back and, really looking at yourself in the mirror and be like, this is the player I am now. And this doesn't mean this is who I will be in 4 years. But let me take my time seriously to develop and get the most out of it.
Welcome back to Unleashing the Baseball Mindset. And there's a difference between being the guy and being ready when your team needs you the most. Today, we're joined by Dalton Beck, a 5A Texas High School Pitcher of the Year, a standout at Grayson College, and in 2024, Incarnate Word, a record breaker who set 8 single season marks, including 89 hits, 18 home runs, and a 700 slugging percentage. Then you went to LSU, and I can imagine their talent is everywhere and culture is everything. At LSU, there's the phrase "hold the rope," coined by the legendary coach Skip Bertman. It means you do whatever the team needs, whether it's sitting the bench or stepping in with 2 outs in the ninth. And in 2025, Dalton became a national champion. Today, we talk about sacrifice, readiness, trust, and what it really means to hold the rope. Dalton, welcome. We're very happy to have you.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
As we get in this, unleashing the baseball mindset. So I have a lot of questions regarding that. That's one of the things Dylan and I focus on quite a bit with the youth athletes is like, what is the mindset that a player needs to really start to perform at a high level? We talk about it all the time that baseball is a game of failure. And that's really what has drawn me to it is to just keep, getting up and keep competing. And we oftentimes call that grit. So as we go through this today, there's going to be quite a bit talking about mindset. I know Dylan also has some ideas or thoughts about the training that went into some of your career. So Dylan, anything you want to start off with here?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and start with this because I think this is very special and very important to say about Dalton. Dalton probably doesn't know this or remember this, or maybe he does. My whole life until I was 17, I was at every LSU baseball game. Have pictures with Skip Bertman in his lap in the locker room. It was a little bit more open environment back then where my dad knew Skip. My dad knew a lot of the players. My dad was going to night school when I was a little kid at LSU, and he got to know a lot of the players. And I fell in love with baseball when I was 3 years old. We spent a lot of time at Alex Box Stadium, a lot of time, learning the culture there, learning the environment there. Skip always put so much focus on the community, the culture around, and built what it is today. And that has continued on with Jay, of course. But about a year ago, when y'all played in the Classic in Frisco,
Pretty
about a
close
year
to it.
ago. Yeah. So all my boys for my team was out there. We were watching all the games. I mean, after the LSU games, of course, the boys would all just take off to the dugouts, try to get signatures, all that kind of stuff. The one thing I noticed about Dalton was he was always so welcoming to the kids. And it wasn't just like sign an autograph, go to the next autograph. He was very good with the kids. And I noticed that along the way, watching your season go by. And obviously, we were at the World Series. They have your autographs. Every kid on my team has your autograph from the World Series because we were in Omaha to play the Slump Buster for my team. So it coincided with the World Series. And what I noticed about Dalton is his engagement with the kids, with the youth, and how it wasn't just like another thing that they had to do. I know that's obviously promoted at LSU to do that kind of stuff, but I noticed how engaged he was. Fast forward to him coming to DBAT, and I had no clue you were from here. I had no idea. I never looked at that history for some reason. I usually do. I don't know why I didn't. But when you showed up at DBAT, I was like, what the heck, man? How did he end up over here? That's weird. And so then I started talking to him, and he told me, and I said, okay, cool. So I got my boys with them, and his attention to these boys is unlike anything I've ever seen. And we've worked with the best in DFW. We've been all over DFW, to the Canes facilities, to South Fork, to all the big names. And I can tell you right now that there's one guy that I want to send my players to, and it's because his attention to detail with the youth. And I want to know how you got there. Like, Is that something that you've always been about? Is it something you learned at LSU, another college, from a coach?
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit of everything. Like when I was in high school, I had a really good pitching coach, and I was with him from probably age 12 to 18 or so. I guess even a little bit longer. I was still during breaks in college, I would go visit with him. And his whole thing was he always had professionals, college players, things like that, that would stick around the facility throughout the day. And he would always want it to be like a joint instruction where he would know that his players actually know what they're talking about or what he's telling them to do because they're able to teach younger kids. And once I got to about 18, 19, he then expected the same out of me, where I've been doing these same drills, these same kind of viewpoints for 4 or 5 years at this point, where I was able to now go through and pick out the parts of these kids and figure out what exactly we should be looking at, what we should be doing. And then the whole thing with the autographs and everything, like when I was at Incarnate Word, very grateful for my time there. I absolutely loved it. Had such a good relationship with all my teammates, but all jokes aside, like we would have 20 people at our games. If we had one person, asking for autographs at the end of the game, that was a pretty cool thing for me. Like, like, dang, somebody's actually watching our games and thinks this is pretty cool. Because I mean, there was a lot of games where it just felt like we were playing Sandlot out with the boys after school, something like that. So once I got to LSU, I knew I had one season left. I really wanted to take in everything that I got to experience there. I tried my best to soak in all the memories and appreciate everything because I knew I wouldn't last forever. And, I don't have anybody really asking me for autographs anymore. So I would, try and get as much as possible. But yeah, the attention to detail, I think that's just being able to be around so many great coaches and kind of see bits and pieces of things and understand that, pitching and hitting, not everybody looks the same, but there are these checkpoints that we have to get to in order to stay healthy and be consistent. And so I think it's a mix of everything, really, just from when I was young to now. I mean, I'm still learning things. So
Did you work with any youth? So back when I was a kid, the players were able to work with youth athletes. Were you able to do that at LSU?
no, we were pretty busy.
Yeah,
Most
it's
of
a little
yeah,
bit
most of
different
my
now.
time was whenever we got off, I would take advantage of it.
Right, right. Tell me the difference that you see with Jay Johnson compared to even Skip Burtman or other coaches out there. Obviously, I know he talks to Skip a lot. Um, what has he? What do you think that he's brought to the culture from Skip, and what are his own coaching, points
Yeah.
and all that?
I think for one, he really understood what he was getting into. He understands the culture, how, die hard Louisiana people are for LSU. They bleed purple and gold, and
Yeah,
he understands the mindset and the tradition that goes with that. So I think he's been able to develop a very good mix between what Coach Burtman did in his tenure and then also be a little new school and add his kind of pieces into it. You guys are talking about hold the rope, very big thing with Coach Burtman, and Coach Johnson. He likes to talk about team over me. Same
yeah,
concept,
yeah,
just kind of his own phrasing. And it's really just, we're all working towards an end goal, that being a championship. And it can take one bad apple, getting out of line to kind of screw things up for everybody else. And
yeah.
if we just take things one game at a time and focus on, this is another Skip Burtman thing, the how to win awareness, what you need to do in each game to come on the succeeding side, we can be very dangerous if we focus on things that other teams or other players getting caught up in. And I think that's what made us very consistent. That's why he's been such a consistently good coach. No matter where he's been, he understands the recipe to win and focus on different things that I feel like other college coaches aren't willing to really put in the time to do.
I honestly, I see him as like just like you said, the modern age, like a reincarnation of Skip Burtman. He's the modern Skip Bertman. That's
Yeah,
exactly
that's
what it
what
is, you know?
I would say, like, a lot of people are starting to kind of throw out the, comparison. I totally agree 100%. LSU fans might not like it as much, but, he's kind of the Nick Saban to the Bear Bryant. I think that's, like, a very good comparison.
Yeah,
He
I could see
he,
that.
I mean, personally, I mean, obviously, I'm a little biased here, but I think he's the best coach in the nation by far, and I think
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
well on his way to getting a few more championships. I mean,
Yeah,
just
that team this year looks
looks bad.
insane, bro.
Yeah, I'm
Ah,
very
they
excited to
look
watch tomorrow.
Whew, I am too. I am too.
What was the biggest difference between, going from Incarnate Word to LSU? And I can imagine there are a lot of differences, but to you, like about the culture, the energy as far as, being a ball player, what was different about LSU?
Yeah, it was honestly surreal. Again, I absolutely loved Incarnate Word. It was fantastic while I was there. Loved my teammates, loved the coaching staff. But the truth is, like, we didn't have any help from the administration. And in this day and age, if you don't have a good support staff with the higher ups, then it's really hard to be successful. We just kind of dealt with what we got, and we did a pretty good job of doing that. But the thing with LSU is you have, I mean, every resource in your pocket when you get there. I mean, at Incarnate Word, if we would have made a regional, that would have been the best season in school history, and they probably would have retired our coach's number. He would have got an extension. It would have been just unbelievable. Where I remember our first meeting at LSU, were one out away. I mean, one strike away from going to super regional and most likely going back to Omaha. And I mean, I think they won like 43 or 45 games that year. During our whole talk, that was a failed season.
Yeah.
We did not withhold standard. We let the fans down. We let everybody around us down, and we will not do that again. And I just remember sitting there thinking, hey, 45 games, that's not too bad. Let's not sell ourselves short. But I think another big thing too, which really surprised me when I got in there, was the dedication to the little things in the beginning of the year, really building structure. I think there's a lot of collegiate programs out there that are just right on day one. They're ready to go in, like hitting 93 off the machine and crazy sliders, and they're working double cuts, whatever. And where we really broke things down to a very elementary aspect in order to build a strong foundation. So then once we got into, week 6 or week 7 or the first week of team practice, that all the coaches knew that we understood what we are supposed to do. And whenever we make a mistake, they can say, we worked on this. What we expect out of you. That was one thing that really impressed me, was just that first week of individuals, how elementary everything was. But when they explain why you're doing everything, it totally makes sense. And I think it's a big part that a lot of programs skip out on.
One of the guys that we have on here, one of our co-hosts, Chris Pike, he likes the Navy SEALs, and he uses this thing about that the Navy SEALs say that they don't practice something until they get it right. They practice until they can't get it wrong. And do you feel like going back to some of those fundamentals, it was a little bit of that mentality? You get so ingrained on the fundamentals, paying attention to the little details, that is obviously going to improve performance when it matters.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows that the atmosphere in Alex Box and just the SEC in general is about as good as it gets, especially once you get to Omaha. So you have to be ready to perform at a high level. If we've done things, Coach Johnson, he likes to talk about the quote, to be a professional, you have to do 10,000 reps. I believe we want to be able to have those 10,000 reps under our belt. So once we get into game 1, game 35, game 68, everything still feels like October 26th in practice, where we don't have to think extra or put any pressure on ourselves, because we know that we've done everything so many times at a high standard, so that everything just feels the same in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Everything becomes subconscious at that point.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to touch on the 10,000, we actually talked about that in our podcast last time. And there is this idea of repeating something 10,000 times or 10,000 hours leads to this level of mastery. And there's also the Bruce Lee or somebody said, don't be scared of the guy that knows 10,000 kicks. Be scared of the guy that's practiced one kick 10,000 times. So that number 10,000 comes up a little bit, but it's more so what we talked about last time is a 10-year process is really what we see developing mastery. However, now kind of backing away from that, if you practice something 10,000 times and you're mindful about it, so you're engaged in the process, it's hard to argue that you're not very, very good at that if you're really engaged in those 10,000 reps.
Yeah, the mindfulness has everything. I mean, with the youth athletics, it has everything to do with that, right? There's so many kids that are going out into their garage. Let's say they take 100 hacks a day and they're not mindful. There's no mindfulness there, and it's just mindless swinging. It doesn't do anything for them.
I think what I wanted to ask is you talked about mistakes, and the way I kind of interpreted what you said, if you were to make a mistake, were they ever addressed? Was there ever a thing of, you better not do that again, or this is the way you fix it? Or was it more of like, these are high level players. I know they're putting in the effort. So if mistakes happened in a game, do the coaches just kind of let it slip? How were mistakes addressed?
We usually always unpack the game right after we usually have a team meeting in the locker room. And then in the morning, before we even go through BP, anything like that, we'll go through our how to win awareness and bring up the last game. So during the game, it's let's play, let's figure out a way to win. I mean, obviously nobody's out there trying to mess up, and baseball happens, mistakes happen, but we are all expected to perform at a high level, and we have been coached how to do things properly. So I think it's more of we understand what we did wrong. We understand how we need to fix that and what we're expecting this next time go around, more so like that.
So I'm trying to think back. Give me a series that y'all just did poorly. There weren't many, but there was a couple, right? Where y'all just played poorly over the 3 games. Explain to me how Jay approached that after the 3 games.
I think there's a couple scenarios here. So Auburn, that was the only time we got swept.
Only 2, probably.
Well, like that was one of those where, we played hard. We really didn't make a whole lot of mistakes. It was more just the way our pitching kind of set up didn't favor us in certain situations. And Coach Johnson, he understands the situations. So at that point, I think we were probably 3rd in the SEC or something like that. And Auburn was a very good ball club at the time. I mean, they had their record attendance 3 nights in a row, which doesn't happen a whole lot when you're playing a team. And it wasn't exactly that we had played poorly, but we ended up on the wrong side of the win column. And it was more unpacking like, okay, here's what we did good. Here's what we need to really improve on and change in these big situations to come out on the right side. We don't need to dwell on what happened, but we need to address it. So now for the next series, we're prepared and that doesn't happen again. I think probably the most famous case would be Northwestern last year.
Yeah.
We'd gotten run ruled by them 13-3. We kind of switched the lineup around, switched some defensive positions around a little bit. And after that, we'd all got into the locker room, and this was something that this was our first time doing it, and we ended up doing it multiple times, but it was just kind of an accountability moment where everybody would put out on the table like, hey, I messed up here. I should have been better here. I won't let y'all down again. And really just kind of get it off our chest so we can go ahead and let go of that moment. I think Brian Kane, he talks about crumbling up that wadded paper ball and throwing it away. And you're letting go of those things you did. You're understanding that you did do it, and you're accepting that. You're not pushing it down, but you got to move on. You can't change what had already happened. And after that, we had played a really good series against Tennessee, and it kind of catapulted us throughout the season. So,
Did y'all initiate that, or did Coach initiate that?
Coach Johnson did actually. So he sat down and he was like, "This is kind of what I want us to do. Like, nobody's in trouble here. I just want us to go ahead and put out that." And he started it first. He said what he felt like he had messed up on during the game in a management sense, and then expected us to follow. And it wasn't okay, now blank, it's your turn to go, or this was full free will. If you are feeling it and feel you had messed up, you are encouraged to go ahead and speak out.
To that goes along with that awareness, like how to win the awareness. At the end of the game, that is a part of awareness of saying, like, hey, I recognized here's the areas where I might have let the team down or things I could do better, and I won't do it again. It's almost like an awareness loop there.
Well, I think the key takeaway from that is, as a coach, right? And I like to look at everything from a coaching perspective because I'm a coach. Um, taking the priority to say what I did wrong first. That's huge. Here's where I went wrong. Here's what I'm going to do better. And then leaving it, to the players after that. I think that's huge. That's a good takeaway. That's a nugget right there. I like that a
Yeah,
lot.
Coach Johnson, he does a lot of studies on how one thing he always talks to us about is how much different the generations are right now versus when he was growing up playing baseball and everything. And
Yep.
there was this huge study done, and I think it was specifically about baseball, about how kids in my generation and younger, they don't respond well to getting berated like a football player. It's just that's how kids end up shutting down. They lose their confidence. They end up playing timid and scared. And, that's just when you play scared in baseball, it's not a good recipe. So it's more of finding that way to address what is going wrong, but still understanding that the coaching staff has full confidence in you and they believe in you. And we're still a team. And this one loss didn't absolutely blow up our season, basically.
Right. Well, and even in what's considered like a bad season for LSU, it's the same thing as, like, I feel, the expectations are so high there, right? But knowing that those coaches are still confident in you, that's what changes the player as an adult, when they get out of baseball or if they go on to play pro ball, that's what changes a player. And I think as coaching the youth, it's so important. We try to stay away from talking about like like me and Chris will call the good old days. Me and Chris played together growing up. That's why he's on our podcast. We played on like this infamous Louisiana team that's still talked about till this day. And that was, 35 years ago or something like that. And we talk about it all the time, is we try not to talk about how it used to be, right? But he's exactly right. You know, we used to have coaches that after a bad game, they would run our asses off, or suicides or running up and down levees. We did that all the time. And, all this stuff that it motivated most of us. People are not built that way anymore. It's just a completely different way of learning and getting better and building confidence. And I think it's huge that a coach, takes the responsibility on his shoulders and says, okay, this is what I did wrong. And, confirming the fact that I still have confidence in you. I know that you guys are better than this. Right. And that's what's so hard for people our age, my age, Coach Johnson's age. It's hard to kind of flip that switch to like the more modern approach. And that's what I've been working on for the past 2 years with Kyle. Kyle's helped me a lot with this. Like, I go to him, like he's the sports psychologist of the group. And I go to him with questions all the time because I played baseball and I know how to coach and I know mechanics, but the mentality is completely different. So I've had to make that switch along the last 8 years of coaching baseball of how to coach kids properly now.
Yeah, I think that's like a big thing too. Is he Coach Johnson, he understands that he's not a sports psychologist. So he uses his resources to provide us with the people that are necessary in order for us to really understand our mindset and go into games
Nice.
with full
Nice.
confidence. We actually, during the season, he'll do it in the fall. You have 2 mental coaches come in and we'll do these team activities that really bond team chemistry and things of that nature. And then once we get into the season, we have a full-time or majority full-time sports psychologist that once SEC play hits, she's there all SEC games. She'll miss the early away trips, but once you hit that back half, She's there the whole time, and we'll run meetings every Thursday or Friday morning before series starts and basically just kind of unpack, here's where I was last week, here's where I am right now. And she goes through different cues of how we can kind of reset, get ourselves locked into the moment, focus on the now, not put extra pressure on ourselves, and just things like that to really help us perform at our highest level.
See, I think that's what's missing at the youth level is those types of programs, and that's what Kyle built about 2 years ago, and we've been working with we do clinics for my players. It's called Competing with Confidence, and he does a 4-hour seminar with the parents and then with me, the coaches, and the kids, and it's been amazing. And I think especially with the way that kids are so different nowadays, and they tend to have so much negativity in them, that we need to get them more positive, more confident. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of programs like that. So that's where we're trying to make the biggest change that we can make with the youth athletes. Because if you have that by the time you're 15 or 16, I mean, you know,
Well, in Dalton, for you, whenever you were at Incarnate Word and even playing through high school and stuff where you did well, what was the focus or inclusion of mental performance in those programs? Was there anything? Did people talk about it? I doubt you had a full-time sports psychologist, but was that a conversation?
In high school, we would do in the fall, right before season started. We would have a strength coach come out, and we would do a decent amount of gosh, I can't think of his name. He's the good guy, the army. He's got a podcast. Man, that's gonna annoy me that I can't think of his name. But we would do a lot of his podcasts and kind of go through a resetting and being able to be in the moment and not worry about what our past mistakes were. But it wasn't to a crazy magnitude. I mean, because in high school you only get so many hours that you can practice, so we really had to optimize our field time. When I was in Incarnate Word, we did a very small Brian Kane kind of class, a few weeks basically, and it was the same thing, but it at Incarnate Word it was more just understanding where you were at and be what you can be today, and because we got to go out and find a way to win. Where at LSU was more being able to unpack, you know, why we're feeling like this, how we can get to a better point, the different cues I can use during the game in order to stay, at my top level from at bat 1 to at bat 4, even if I'm 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts, something like that.
And like Dylan said, our hope is if we can just start to introduce this stuff now to the younger players, like it's really hard, I feel like, for them to conceptualize a lot of the ideas. And the manual that I've written, it's written at a relatively high level, but I think it's good for them. And it's a workbook. So we want them to work through this stuff too. But that's kind of the hope. It's like, I can't wait till we can fast forward 3 or 4 years and see how these kids are doing, because that's really where we're trying to make the impact.
100%.
yeah, yeah.
And we see a lot of these kids too, like Brock, that already Max, and there's some other ones too. They're already so strong mentally. Not saying they're perfect, because I know there's some anxiety and stuff like that. But you can tell, like even at a young age, they really are starting to pick up on some of this stuff. So we're seeing improvements now, but really we want to see how it progresses over the next several years.
Yeah, I think the big thing with the youth level at this age, because I deal with a lot of, youth kids with my lessons, and then I actually coach a 10U team as well. And they don't really understand stuff as much because they haven't been communicated to a full level. And when you're able to kind of break away that time to really communicate exactly what you mean, in that, I'm talking to you because I'm trying to help you, instead of like, we did this wrong and now I'm upset at you, they tend to understand a little bit better. Now, obviously, 10-year-olds are 10-year-olds. So it's one of those things that you're going to have to remind them over and over and over again. But if you're willing to put in the time to communicate, then you can see over that time they're able to understand even more information as you're learning different things as well.
Well, and I can say 100% you have that knack to do that. I think, if coaching is one thing that you want to do, like in your future, you have the ability to do that. Like I've talked to Kyle about you many times, is how impressed I am with your interaction with kids versus other trainers. And you can watch a trainer and tell if they're going to be a good coach. And your interaction with kids and the way that you handle, whether it's failure, disappointment, whatever you want to call it, it's incredible. And it's something that I think all coaches should strive to be, is, to be able to deal with their own emotions properly, to be able to communicate with the kids. And you do that very well.
Well, I
And
appreciate that. Yeah, I think like the biggest thing for me is I can understand from their perspective that baseball is very hard. I mean, we can all agree, like we picked probably the worst sport that we could have played. Um, we're gonna fail. Everybody knows that. And just because we don't like where we are right now doesn't mean we can't get there. Like I absolutely love baseball to death. If that would have been a major in college, it would have been mine. And there's I want to do absolutely whatever I can in life where I'm going to be in the game for as long as possible. I love
yeah,
baseball.
yeah,
It's always what it's been like for me for since I was a little kid. And the one thing that I can really get into their shoes is I wasn't a very good baseball player until I was about 15 or 16 years old. And it took a lot of time. Some of the drills that I have my kids do, I would have to do those every single day with my pitching coach. And there would be days where we didn't even pick up a baseball just because my mechanics were so poor. And I mean, I would just absolutely spray the zone. And, I needed a lot of work. And I saw that, it wasn't a lot of fun for my first year and a half of doing lessons with them. And then by year 3, I was seeing these crazy jumps of what I was becoming. And I really understood that, it's a process. And one thing I believe the most is, the longer you do it, the better you're going to get. I mean, you look at some of these big league guys, and when you're a kid, you think it's all God-given talent. And then you understand, like, they've just been doing this for so long.
yeah,
They have been getting this high level coaching and they continue to strive to be better. And the reason why they're so good is because day to day they're chasing a goal, even if they're already in the major leagues, and they get it. And that I wish I would have understood that sooner as a player. So I really do enjoy helping kids grow in the game. And I want them to kind of learn from the mistakes that I made throughout, and for them to be able to understand some things that I didn't even know till I was 17 or 18. So that once, like you said, once they're 13, 14, 15, people are like, who are these kids?
yeah.
What's going
We
on here?
we say it all the time, process over outcome, right? You can't worry
100%.
about the games that you lost. You got to worry about what you're doing. What are you doing? What are you doing? You got to be mindful of what you're doing at home. You got to be mindful during practices, you know.
And learning too just about kind of like you said and reframing mistakes. We try to change words like mistakes and failure and stuff like that, and always going back to it being a process. If something doesn't go right today, well, that gives us information, so now we know how to get better. And again, I know it's hard for a lot of kids to understand that logically, like they just don't. And then it comes from, we talk about communicating clearly, but a lot of kids too, I absolutely agree with that, but they learn by watching you. So at first, so then how are you responding to their mistakes? Like my son, he's 6, but he plays baseball, and I was watching his coach last night. I wish his coach would watch these, but I don't think he will. So I'll say this: the kids were missing, and it's coach pitch. He was just doing short toss, like he just kept dropping his head every single time. And I had to leave because the kids are seeing that. Do you think that kid ever hit a ball? Nope, he sure didn't. But then just, I think you had great coaches that demonstrated that for you, and
Yeah.
you've picked up a lot of that, and you're doing the same thing for these kids. And I think that's another reason why you probably connect really well with them.
That's what I actually have 2 things to add there. I think that's a great point. So for one, Coach Johnson, he would talk about a loss is really, you only ever lose from losing if you don't collect what happened, what went wrong, and learn from it. If you just take the loss and you're like, well, we suck today and, we'll go get them next time, then that's when a loss really becomes a loss. If you can go through like, hey, wasn't what we wanted, but this is why it happened. And this is what will keep us on the other side next time. then that's what gets you over the hump. And I'll say as well with coaches' reactions, this is obviously the best story or example that I could give is in the World Series finals and it was game 1 and Daniel Dickinson was hit by a ball in the elbow on a 3-2 count in the 7th inning. And it's a 1-0 ball game. And I believe that would have pushed the runners to first and second, or we would have had 2 guys on something around there. And it was very late in the game, pushing for runs right now. Probably would have gotten Nick Brown up to bat, would have been a very big moment in the game. And they end up reviewing it, and they say that he leaned into the baseball when, I mean, it was fully a ball, wouldn't have been a strike. And now you're rewarding a pitcher for throwing a ball and you're getting a strikeout from it. And the whole thing is in the NCAA rules, you're not allowed to argue or review. Once the review is done, it's done. You're not going to change their decision. That's how it is. And Coach Johnson understood that. And once it didn't go our way, he stayed, collected. And he's like, hey, all right, let's go out and let's get 3 outs right here and let's get back in and then we'll score some runs. And it was just kind of showing like, hey, like that didn't go our way, but we're okay. This isn't a huge deal for us. We still have the lead. Let's go. And then on the flip side in game 2, and I don't want to bring this up in any ill fashion, but Coastal's head coach gets fired up for some calls and he's not happy about. And same thing, the rules are once you've been warned, that's it. You can't say anything else, and you got to head back. And those are the rules. And he continued to argue after he was warned. And I mean, I think a lot of people would agree it was a very quick warning. It was a very quick throw, but the rules are rules. It's if you're gonna be in a high level game like that, you have to kind of be aware of what could happen. His team saw that and saw 2 coaches go down in the first inning. And I mean, it's already tough when Omaha's got 12,000, 15,000 fans all chanting LSU at the same time. All that's happening is a snowball effect, and it's making it harder on yourselves and putting more doubt into their minds and, building confidence for yourself. So I think that's probably one of the best examples I saw with my eyes. Wow.
Yeah.
How much reactions can dictate the rest of the game.
I can say that's one thing that is different with Jay Johnson and Skip Bertman, as Jay Johnson has so much patience, man.
He does,
He has so much patience. I got one. So let's talk about the Goon Squad. That was obviously a great phrase, obviously for you, a great thing to be a part of. But talk about how you deal with playing all the time to going be part of the Goon Squad. Like obviously after it got termed and, it's probably a really cool thing to be termed as one of the, the Goon Squad guys.
Am I the only one that needs the Goon Squad described to them? Everybody else knows what it is.
So basically our one of our hitting coaches, Chief Mark Wanaka, he's absolutely great guy. He would just kind of call, we had a good little rotation of people that Coach Johnson loves to pinch hit. He loves for people to get their opportunities. He loves playing the matchups. That's his thing. And we had a very deep team. One thing that was talked about a lot is if we would have used our 9 players on the bench, we probably would win a decent amount of SEC ball games. Our group of pinch hitters per se, he would just kind of call us his gooners, like his little Goon Squad boys. I don't know when he, started calling us that, but it coined. And then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks into it, we go in the locker room and we got some T-shirts, and we have some real characters on our team, so they're telling us, everyone who's got a T-shirt, if you don't wear this T-shirt for batting practice, you're disrespecting us, and like you're not really one of us. You got to prove that you're with us. And so we all cut the sleeves off and we're wearing them batting practice, and they end up sticking pretty hard. And it was one of those things where it was a lot of fun to, be a part of. And obviously when you're dealing with pinch hitting situations, it's not an easy situation. And you always want whoever's up there to succeed, because, you're not going up there to pinch hit in a blowout where it doesn't matter. These are make or break moments that, you're coming off the bench. You haven't seen anything since BP, which was 3.5, 4 hours ago. And Now you got to be ready for a top SEC reliever, and can be tough, but it makes it fun. That's that was one thing that I'm very granted. I was very excited to come into LSU and be able to be in some big time moments, and being part of the Goon Squad, it put me in some fun opportunities that I'll look back on, and those were some of the most fun games of my life. Going. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, once that became a thing, right? The Goon Squad became a thing. I think that built a lot of confidence in you guys, right? And knowing that you're the guy to come up in a clutch situation. But I want to kind of move back from before that happened. How did you deal with that from being, the stud all the way, and then now all of a sudden you're coming off the bench? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so I'll take it back a little bit farther. When I was at Incarnate Word, it was a great time. I mean, had a unbelievable season for myself. Very proud with what I was able to produce there, and it was just I had a ton of fun like playing there. And when it got into the portal, I had no intentions of going in. I really enjoyed my time at Incarnate Word, and I was like, hey, like that was a lot of fun. Like, I want to go do it again, basically. And one of my best friends, he was playing at Arizona at the time, and they hosted a regional. So me and a buddy, we drove up, went and watched them in a regional, and the whole time I'm sitting with his parents, so, I'm eating dinner with him, hanging out at his house. He's like, dude, you gotta hit the portal. Like, you have to do this. This is your last chance. Like, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't even think anybody would really want to talk to me that much. Like, I just don't understand. I don't want to risk it and then end up with going somewhere I don't really want to be at. And he's like, trust me, dude, like people will come if you get in there. And I was like, I don't know. We'll kind of see. So I go back home, and one of our pitchers that was actually on LSU for the year, he played at Nichols, which was the same conference that Incarnate Word is in, Southland. And he goes into the portal one day, and I'm on Twitter and I see it. And I show my dad, and I was like, hey, that's pretty interesting. I wonder what he'll get. If he ends up committing somewhere really good, like in LSU, I literally said LSU, I think, that kind of shows me what the possibilities are. And I think it was 2 days later, he's posting that he's committed to LSU. And my dad actually saw it first. He was like, hey, you remember what you said? You said if you went to LSU, you're going to try it out. And I was like, you know what? I did say that. The whole thing, ever since I was a high school baseball player, middle schooler, I've always appreciated college baseball a little bit more. I just really like college sports, and I love how meaningful every game is in college baseball, and just that fight to get to Omaha and the appreciation if you get there. And I had told my now fiance at the time, all I want to do is play in one postseason baseball game. If I make a regional, that's my Super Bowl. I will feel like I have made it if I can just go to a regional. And so really thought about it, prayed about it, and decided I would end up going to the portal. And I think I put my name in about 9 a.m. and by 9:05, Coach Simpson was calling me, asking me if I wanted to go to LSU. And I had a great relationship with him, and we kind of really laid out what everything looked like and just the culture at LSU and what we expected to do if I would go there. And it's very appealing. It's hard when you have the Dodgers of the SEC or college baseball talking to you, it's kind of hard to turn away just with all the history and the culture and everything. And I had some other schools talking to me, and I knew that if I were to go to LSU, it would be a battle, and that I would be facing off with the best players in the nation. And that's who I would be competing against for a spot, where I had some other options that if I were to go there, I knew I would get a lot more playing time. I would probably start the full season and not have to worry, but would that get me to the end goal of where I wanted to be at? And, the decision was really like, hey, if I'm not a starter, that's okay. I'm going to enjoy my time here. I'm going to give it all I got, and whatever happens, that's what's meant to happen. And when it's my time, I'm going to be ready, and I'm going to show them what I got and just enjoy the opportunity I get while I'm there, because I'd seen the complete other side of it of, having these great games that I won't say meant nothing, but coming out of it, we didn't get a trophy. We didn't get a participation trophy. We didn't get anything. We got sent back, and I was watching the regionals from my couch. And, that was something that, even having such a great season, it left that kind of hole of desire to be there. And so once I got to LSU, it's very apparent from day one, like, these guys are here for a reason. If you're a freshman, you are an absolute stud. And if you're a transfer, same thing. There's a reason why you were brought here. And the fall is honestly harder than the season. You're facing 96 from the left side every day, or 100 from the right side. And that can get pretty taxing mentally to deal with. And that's why it helped that we had such great mental coaches and sports psychologists. But once we got into the season, it kind of felt like a breath of fresh air. Hey, I've already handled what I have in the fall. Whenever it's my time to come up, I know that I'm going to be ready, because I've faced this 3rd overall pick and these guys that I ended up signing for millions of dollars. So I think that was an extra kind of boost of confidence going into the season. Was, I didn't take offense for not starting or anything. I get it. I understand. Like, Derek Curriell, that kid's a stud. Jake Brown, unbelievable. Jared Jones, just incredible. So I'm very realistic, and I can appreciate really good baseball. So, it was fun to just be a part of that team, really, and get any sort of moments to kind of stamp my name a part of the program. So I think that's kind of where my mind was with everything.
What would you tell a younger person if they're not guaranteed a starting spot? It seems like you just sort of naturally maybe had that hold the rope mentality. It sounds like you went into the situation at LSU and maybe had the mindset of, I'm just happy to be here and I'll just try to be the best teammate I can. And it's sometimes harder to get young people to understand that. So what would you tell a younger player in the same situation?
Yeah, I think when you're a senior in high school and you're 18 years old, you kind of have this blown up idea of what you are. And you kind of have to take a step back and look at reality. Like, with how the portal is now and all these extra waivers and everything, you're going to be 18 facing 24, 25-year-olds who have gotten thousands of at-bats in collegiate baseball. And that's a big deal. Regardless of who you are, unless you're a top 50 prospect in high school, it's really hard to come in and compete at these high level places. So being able to take a step back and, really looking at yourself in the mirror and be like, this is the player I am now. And this doesn't mean this is who I will be in 4 years, but let me take my time seriously to develop and get the most out of it. Personally, I did not want to go to junior college. When I was in high school, that was the last thing I wanted to do. I had this kind of preconceived notion about what it would be, and I had too big of an ego to want to go there. And then Rusty Hart called me up, who I think is the best junior college coach out there. And we basically just sat down in Sherman, Texas, and we had like a 2-hour conversation of, this isn't what it's kind of made out to be. You're going to come in here and we're going to play a full fall season. Then we're going to have a full spring season. And you're going to end up getting 200 at bats, where if you were to go to a D1 and not play, you're not getting those at bats. You're kind of watching from the sideline while these other people are able to continue their development. And the whole thing with JUCO is, your head coach is out there pushing for you to advance. They're not there to hold you back. They want to see you succeed and, go to bigger and better things. So being able to kind of understand that for myself and say, okay, you know what? I need to go junior college. It's not exactly what I want to do, but it's what's going to make me the best baseball player once I am ready to handle everything else. And now that was hard. And then once I got there, I absolutely loved it. Junior college is the best, I think, just with all the new roster reconstruction in college baseball. I think that a lot of high school players should really consider junior college, just because, it's tough to go to even a small D1 now, because a lot of the philosophies there are find bounce backs that didn't work out at a bigger D1 who they're searching for that playing time, and use a mentality of staying super old in your lineup to to really compete in your league. These bigger, better teams, they're able to take these best high school prospects and use all their resources to develop them there. I think don't be afraid of junior college. Don't be afraid of D2. I mean, D2 is unbelievably competitive. I have one of my best friends was at Angelo State for 2.5 years, and he's at LSU this year. So it's not as far as a leap as it might seem when you're 18 years old. Like, I mean, there's an unbelievable amount of D2, D3 programs that can get you to where you want to be. Just understand that when you're 18, you might still need development. That's not a bad thing to need, but go into a place where you can say, I will be comfortable being here. I'm going to be able to get what is necessary for me to help me continue throughout my career.
So you mentioned, the only reason I bring this up, you mentioned it earlier. You said that you prayed about it, about the portal. Me and Kyle talk about this a lot, about there being a bigger thing, right? Me and Kyle are both Christians, and I wonder, it seems like to me, if I'm reading this right, is that you understand the bigger picture. You understand there's more to this than baseball. How did you include that into your walk with your faith and your walk with baseball? How did that play an important role in your baseball career?
Yeah. When I was in junior college, I got too focused on just being a baseball player. And I was trying to find all my happiness and trying to find my fulfillment through baseball. And no matter what, I think I hit 380 on the year and had 9 home runs, something like that. I had a good season, but there were still, pieces of me that I was searching for. And starting out my year at UIW, I was still looking for the same things. And then about halfway through, I started going to our team Bible study. It's crazy the amount of pressure that's taken off your shoulders when you're able to realize, this isn't all on me. And I have somebody out there looking out for me and helping me guide me through this. I kind of had the realization by my sophomore, junior year of college that I probably wasn't going to be a big league baseball player. Growing up, that was everything I wanted to be. And throughout these Bible studies and getting closer with God, I realized that that's okay. I don't have to be a baseball player. People aren't going to remember me as Dalton Beck, the baseball player. People are going to remember the person I was, the teammate I was. I love my friendships with my teammates a lot more than what they did on the baseball field. And I think really once I got to LSU, I really honed in on that. We had a great chaplain that works with the team. They'd been doing that since the Skip Berkman days. And it's just amazing that even, not getting maybe the playing time that going in I would have hoped for, but not feeling any resentment or pressure. I felt very grateful for all the situations I had been in. And looking back at it now, like I absolutely was, I mean, I loved my college journey. It was very crazy. And at times, there were times that I'd be embarrassed about it. And I was very lucky to get to do what I got to do. And, there's only one person that can put you in those situations. And it's crazy. The more that you really put your time in and talk to God and grow your relationship there, what doors will open for you.
That's gold, man. That's gold. I love that.
Maybe one last question, and we can keep it short. But if you look back over your career, which is odd to say since you're only 24, you're still very much in a career. What do you hope people say or remember about you as a teammate?
That I was just a fun guy to be around, and that I hope I brought a lot of smiles to people's faces and that they enjoyed being around me. I could be a character at some times, and I just hope that if somebody were to say, "Hey, did you know Dalton Beck?" Something like that, that it would crack a smile on their face for them to be like, you know what, I did know that guy. No matter what happened on the field, at least I knew that he was going to be around and he was going to keep a positive attitude. That was one thing I had to kind of adjust in junior college was it doesn't matter what's going on. If I can be positive day after day, it can change everybody else's mood and the way they go about things. And It's nobody likes being upset, and you can kind of do the fake it till you make it and help other people build you up with your positivity kind of radiating. So that's one thing that helped me when, things weren't going my way. If I stay positive, then the people around me were going to be a lot more enjoyable to be around as well. And then we can all enjoy what's going on, these incredible moments together, which is a lot of fun.
Well, and I can tell you this, man. I know I've been singing your praises a lot, but um, the way that you interact with the children, man, I tell you, that's one thing that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. And I know for a fact because I remember my coaches from LSU when I took lessons from the guys. I still keep in touch with those guys, and ultimately, to me, coaching, if I'm successful at coaching, that looks like, these kids that are still contacting me when they're 18, 19, 20, they invite me to their wedding, whatever. And that means I did my job, right? And I can tell you, my two boys and several boys on my team that remember you and will remember you. Obviously, my boys are still working with you, so that goes without saying. But I think you did a great job with that. I think you're a really important person to the kids these days, and you're doing that as a job now, which is phenomenal. And whatever you do, I'm hoping that you're able to keep impacting the youth because that's what's important to me right now. And you're doing a great job at it.
Well, I appreciate it.
Dalton, thank you so much for your time. I think one thing too is it seems like you're very wise beyond your years. Maybe the time you spent in baseball and really knowing, like you said, it's the hardest sport there is. So you know highs and you know lows, and maybe that's helped you to mature in some way. It might be your faith that's helped as well too. It's been great having you on, and like Dylan said, really exciting to see somebody like you spending time with the youth. It's such a blessing to them to be able to do that, like Dylan said. So very very happy you're doing what you do.
Yeah, well, thank you all for having me. This was a great time to see you guys around. Do it again sometime.